You're sitting at your desk with three different notebooks, two spreadsheets you barely understand, a shoebox of receipts, and absolutely no clear picture of whether you're actually staying within budget this month. You know you're supposed to track expenses in retirement. Everyone says so, but somehow it's become this overwhelming mess that makes you anxious every time you think about it. My name is David Harrington. I spent over 2 decades as an investment banking analyst and portfolio strategist, navigating market cycles, recessions, and financial bubbles. After stepping away from institutional finance, I now focus on helping everyday people, especially those approaching or enjoying retirement, understand money in a calm, practical way. Before we continue, a quick note. This isn't financial advice. Everyone's situation is different. Think of this as education to help you ask better questions and make calmer decisions. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which tracking tools actually work for retirees. Simple, practical systems that give you clarity without making you feel like you need an accounting degree. And please, if you find this helpful, subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. It helps more people find this information. Now here's what I learned after helping hundreds of retirees get their arms around this exact problem. Most tracking systems fail not because they're poorly designed, but because they're built for working people who have paychecks coming in twice a month. Retirement income doesn't work that way. You've got Social Security arriving on the third Wednesday, maybe a pension on the first of the month, an RMD that hits once a year, dividends that show up quarterly. It's a completely different rhythm, and the tools need to match that reality. Let me start with the simplest approach that works for a surprising number of retirees. A single-page monthly tracker, not a complex spreadsheet with 17 tabs, not software that requires 3 tutorials to understand. Just one page that shows your income sources at the top and your expense categories down the side. You can create this in 15 minutes using a piece of paper or a basic Word document. Here's why this works. You're not trying to track every single dollar. You're trying to answer one question. Am I living within my means this month? At the top, you write down what actually came in. Social Security, $2,400. Pension, $1,800. Investment withdrawal, $1,000. Total income for the month, $5,200. Then you track your major expense categories: housing costs, utilities, groceries, healthcare, transportation, discretionary spending. Not every individual transaction, just the categories that matter. End of the month, you add it up. Did you spend more than $5,200? If yes, you know you need to adjust something. If no, you're fine. You don't need fancy software to tell you that. This approach respects something important about retirement that most financial tracking tools ignore. You're not trying to optimize for maximum efficiency. You're trying to maintain peace of mind and stay on a sustainable path. Now, if you want something slightly more sophisticated but still simple, let me show you what actually works in real life. A basic checkbook register. I know that sounds ancient. I know most people don't write checks anymore. But the principle is perfect for retirement income tracking. You write down what comes in and what goes out, and you see your running balance after each transaction. You can do this in a physical register if you prefer writing things down. Or you can use the Notes app on your phone. Or a simple Excel spreadsheet with 3 columns: date, description, and balance. Every time Social Security hits, you add it to your balance. Every time you pay the electric bill, you subtract it. You always know exactly where you stand. Here's what this method does that most budgeting apps don't. It forces you to engage with every transaction. When you have to physically write down or type in that $85 restaurant meal, you're making a conscious decision. You're not just letting it disappear into an automated category that you'll review weeks later. That moment of awareness, that small friction, actually helps you stay on track without feeling restricted. Think about it this way. When you were working, you could overspend 1 month and make it up the next with overtime or a bonus. In retirement, your income is fixed. Every month looks essentially the same. So the goal isn't to track every penny to find savings opportunities. The goal is to develop an accurate sense of your spending rhythm and make sure it matches your income rhythm. Now let's talk about the middle ground. Simple software tools that respect your time and don't require you to become a technology expert. I'm going to give you 3 options that work well for retirees, and I'll tell you exactly when each one makes sense. First, Quicken Simplify. This is the streamlined version of traditional Quicken, designed for people who want basic tracking without complexity. You link your bank accounts and credit cards, and it automatically pulls in your transactions. You can see all your spending in one place without manually entering everything. It costs about $48 a year, which works out to $4 a month. For many retirees, this is the sweet spot between automation and simplicity. Here's when Quick and Simplify makes sense. You're comfortable with technology, but you don't want to spend hours setting things up. You use a debit card or credit card for most purchases, so automatic transaction importing actually captures your spending. You want to see trends over time. Am I spending more on groceries this year than last year? You like having everything in one place without maintaining multiple spreadsheets. Here's when it doesn't make sense. You pay for most things with cash or checks, so automatic importing won't capture much. You find technology frustrating and would rather write things down by hand. You're uncomfortable linking your financial accounts to third-party software. In those cases, stick with the manual methods I mentioned earlier. Second option, Tiller Money. This is an interesting hybrid approach. It automatically pulls your transactions into a Google Sheet or Excel spreadsheet that you control. You get the automation of software with the flexibility of a spreadsheet you can customize. It costs about $79 a year, roughly $6.50 a month. Tiller makes sense if you're comfortable with spreadsheets and you want more control over how your data is organized. You can set up your categories exactly the way you think about your spending. You can create custom reports. You own your data completely. It's in your own spreadsheet, not locked inside someone else's software. And if you already use Google Sheets or Excel for other things, this feels natural. It doesn't make sense if spreadsheets intimidate you or if you want something that just works without any customization. Tiller gives you flexibility, but that means you need to do some setup work to make it useful. Third option, Monarch Money. This is newer software designed specifically around the question, am I on track? Rather than trying to optimize every dollar. It costs about $100 a year, roughly $8.50 a month. It automatically categorizes transactions, shows you trends, and focuses on the big picture rather than micro-tracking every expense. Monarch makes sense if you want modern software that feels clean and simple, if you like seeing visual dashboards that show your financial picture at a glance, and if you want something designed for the question, am I staying within my means, rather than, where can I cut another $5? Now here's what I want you to notice about all three of these tools. None of them are trying to turn you into a financial analyst. None of them have 17 features you'll never use. They're designed around clarity, not complexity. That matters in retirement, because you don't have time or energy to waste on systems that create more stress than they solve. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. You're using one of these simple systems. Let's say the one-page monthly tracker or Quick and Simplify. 3 months in, you notice something. Your actual spending is running about $400 higher per month than you expected. That's not a crisis. That's information. Now you can make a calm decision. Maybe you look at where that extra $400 is going and you decide it's worth it. You're spending more on travel to see grandchildren, and that matters more to you than having a bigger cushion. Fine. You adjust your withdrawal strategy accordingly, and you move on with clarity. Or maybe you look at it and realize half of that is subscription services you forgot you were paying for, and the other half is eating out more than you intended. Now you can make some simple changes. Cancel the subscriptions you don't use. Cook at home a few more nights per week. You're not depriving yourself. You're just aligning your spending with what you actually value. Here's what separates retirees who feel in control from retirees who feel anxious. It's not how much money they have. It's how clearly they understand their financial rhythm. When you know what's coming in and what's going out, when you can see patterns developing, you make better decisions. You don't panic when the property tax bill arrives because you knew it was coming. You don't feel guilty about buying something you enjoy because you can see you're still on track overall. That clarity comes from tracking, but it has to be the right kind of tracking. If your system makes you feel like you're doing homework every weekend, you'll abandon it within 3 months. If your system makes you feel anxious every time you look at it, you'll start avoiding it. The best tracking system is the one you'll actually use consistently without it feeling like a burden. Now let me address something that comes up often. You might be thinking, I've been managing money my whole life. I have a sense of whether I'm overspending. Do I really need to track this formally? Here's what I've observed. When you're working and you have a paycheck coming in regularly, you develop an intuitive sense of your spending. You know roughly what you can afford without thinking about it too hard. But retirement changes that intuition. Your income is coming from multiple sources on different schedules. You're making bigger one-time purchases, a new roof, a car replacement, helping a grandchild with college. You're dealing with healthcare expenses that can spike unpredictably, and you're trying to make a fixed amount of money last for an unknown number of years. That's a fundamentally different challenge than managing money during your working years. Tracking gives you back that intuitive sense, but calibrated for retirement reality. After 6 months of consistent tracking, you'll know what your actual spending rhythm looks like. You'll know which months are typically higher because of property taxes or insurance premiums. You'll know your baseline and you'll know your spikes. That knowledge creates confidence. Let me give you a specific example. I worked with a couple who insisted they didn't need to track anything. They'd been married 40 years, managed money successfully, raised 3 kids, put them through college. They knew what they were doing. But 6 months into retirement, they had this nagging anxiety they couldn't shake. Were they spending too much? Should they be pulling back? They weren't sure. I convinced them to try the one-page monthly tracker for just 3 months. Not forever, just 3 months to see what the data showed. They discovered something surprising. They weren't overspending. They were actually spending about $600 less per month than their income allowed. But because they didn't have clear numbers, they'd been feeling anxious and restricting themselves unnecessarily. Once they saw the data, everything changed. They started enjoying retirement more. They booked a trip they'd been putting off. They helped their daughter with a home repair she needed. Not recklessly. They could see they had room in the budget. The tracking didn't restrict them. It freed them. Here's another pattern I've seen. Some retirees track obsessively in the beginning because they're anxious, and then they gradually relax once they understand their patterns. That's perfectly fine. Use the tracking intensively for 6 months or a year until you develop confidence. Then scale back to a lighter touch if that works for you. The tool serves you. You don't serve the tool. Now, what about couples where one person wants to track everything and the other person finds it tedious? This comes up all the time. Here's what works. The person who enjoys tracking does the system maintenance, but you review it together once a month for 15 minutes. Just 15 minutes. You sit down with coffee. You look at the summary, you discuss anything that seems off, and then you're done until next month. That gives the tracker the satisfaction of staying on top of things, and it gives the non-tracker the assurance that someone's paying attention without having to be involved in the details. You're both informed, but you're not both spending hours on it. That's a reasonable division of labor that respects both personalities. Let me also mention what not to do. Don't use complex investment tracking software for retirement expense management. Software like Quicken Premier or Personal Capital is designed to track your investment portfolio performance. That's a different job than tracking whether you're staying within your monthly budget. You end up with way more features than you need and way more complexity than helps. Don't try to track every single dollar to the penny. If you spend $3.75 on coffee and you can't remember whether to categorize it as food or discretionary or entertainment, you're working too hard. Round it to $4. Put it in whichever category makes sense to you and move on. Precision to the penny doesn't matter. Accuracy to the general pattern matters. And don't beat yourself up for months where you overspend. Some months cost more. The roof springs a leak. You need dental work. Your daughter needs help. That's life. The tracking isn't there to judge you. It's there to show you patterns over time so you can make informed adjustments when needed. Here's what good tracking actually looks like in retirement. You spend maybe 30 minutes a week keeping your system updated, entering transactions manually or reviewing what's been automatically imported. Once a month, you spend 15 minutes looking at the bigger picture. Am I on track? Are there any concerning patterns? Do I need to adjust anything? That's it. 45 minutes total per month to maintain complete clarity about your financial situation. In exchange for that small-time investment, you get something invaluable. You sleep better. You make decisions with confidence instead of anxiety. You know when you can say yes to something you want without guilt. You know when you need to pull back before it becomes a problem. You're in control instead of wondering and worrying. Let me show you one more approach that works beautifully for people who hate tracking but know they need to do something. The 2-account system. You have one checking account where your retirement income lands, Social Security, pension, whatever your sources are. At the beginning of each month, you transfer your budgeted spending amount to a second checking account. That's your spending account for the month. You don't track individual transactions. You just watch the balance in that spending account. When it gets low, you know you're running out of room for the month. When there's money left over at the end of the month, you transfer it back to the main account or into savings. This system uses your account balance as the tracking mechanism instead of requiring you to categorize every purchase. It's not perfect. It doesn't tell you where your money is going, just whether you're staying within your overall limit. But for people who absolutely won't track any other way, this at least creates awareness and prevents overspending without requiring detailed record keeping. Now here's what ties all of this together. The specific tool you choose matters less than having some system that gives you visibility. I've seen retirees succeed with everything from a notebook they keep in the kitchen drawer to sophisticated software they check on their iPad. The common thread isn't the tool. It's the commitment to knowing their numbers clearly enough to make calm decisions. You don't need to become an accountant. You don't need to track every penny. You need to answer 3 questions accurately. What came in this month? What went out this month? Am I on a sustainable path? Pick the simplest tool that answers those questions for you, and you're doing exactly what you need to do. The peace of mind that comes from that clarity is worth far more than the small amount of time it takes to maintain it. You're not tracking because someone told you you're supposed to. You're tracking because knowing your numbers lets you enjoy retirement without that background anxiety about whether you're doing it right. Your future self, the one living in retirement 5, 10, 15 years from now, is counting on you to figure this out. Not perfectly, just clearly enough to stay on track. Pick one of these approaches. Give it 3 months. See what you learn. That's all you need to do today. Start simple. Stay consistent. Let the clarity guide your decisions. You'll be fine.